NIL is crazy, but Bill O'Brien has a plan for it at Boston College.
You are Locked On Boston College, your daily podcast on the Boston College Eagles. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome. My name is AJ Black. This is Locked On Boston College, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Place your $5 bet and you'll get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get yourself started. Now, we're going to talk about three really interesting Boston College news items today. One's going to be on NIL. The other, a future game, and I'm going to explain why I'm pumped for this one. And then we're going to look at the ACC schedule for basketball, and I have a few thoughts I want to get into there. So it's a very packed episode, and I think you're going to enjoy today's show. Now, let's get into it. On Wednesday morning, the college sports world was ablaze with the discussion about the opting out, basically, of Matthew Sluka, a quarterback from UNLV, who decided to redshirt basically for the rest of the year and not take because he was not. There was some issue with NIL, and we didn't know exactly what that was. But more and more reports are coming out that the NIL collective from UNLV, when he transferred from Holy Cross, remember, this is the quarterback that almost beat Jeff Hafley last year for Holy Cross. But when he transferred over, there were certain promises, it sounds like, that were being made to him, and that the collective was just not following through with it. So there's a lot of talk about this because he, bailed on his team. UNLV is a good school. They're right now projected to be a playoff team because they're going to be they're right now the highest rated G5 school with wins over Kansas and Houston, which not big wins, but they're still Power 5 wins. I think a lot of people, if you're a UNLV fan, we're probably pretty upset about this, but other people are like, well, this is the game. And NIL, it's been messy. And as we go back and talk about this over and over again, college football and the NCAA had their opportunities to get a hold of all of this. And basically in 2021, they just wiped their hands and said, you guys deal with it. And since then, it's been basically the Wild West. You have all these collectives and agents who aren't really agents, just people who know these kids, agreeing to terms that may or may not be fulfilled. And what you get there is, and I saw someone make a great analogy of it, is what do you do if it doesn't happen? Like for Sluka, if they're offering him, and I saw something about 6 figures, and they're not paying him, what's he supposed to do? They made the analogy, it's like a drug dealer going to the cops. Like, what are the cops going to do if the drug dealer gets ripped off? They're not going to do anything. There's no governing body on any of this. So it's all just basically up in the air. And so NIL, we have said, I've talked about it on this show multiple times, that NIL is basically the Wild West. There's no legislation. They just rejected the House settlement. There's no anyone to make sure this is enforceable. So it's crazy. It's crazy everywhere. And I'm honestly surprised this hasn't happened more with what happened with Sluka, because now UNLV doesn't have their starting quarterback, and they're going into a stretch where they could probably fall apart pretty quick. Now, why am I bringing this up for Boston College? Well, Bill O'Brien talked about this and how it impacts BC. And he didn't really talk about the UNLV situation because, if you've ever listened to a coach, most of them are not going to get into extraneous situations, especially when it happened in the morning and he had practice. But I thought what Bill O'Brien said was a great quote that kind of gives you an idea of where BC's at with the NI situation. He said, no one will ever be able to promise anything here at Boston College. They'll have to come in and earn it. Some people may listen to and say, well, coach, how are you going to survive? Well, we'll survive. Boston College is a very special place. We'll have a lot to offer at Boston College besides NIL. Look, if you come into BC and you get a BC degree, then NIL will seem like peanuts to you 10 years later. Peanuts. Now, nothing he just said there was anything we haven't heard other coaches say. Basically, Jeff Hafley said the exact same thing, right? But what I think he's saying, and before people take it completely out of context, is that you're looking at BC's NIL deals. They're not just going to go and dump money at a player and say, here's $200,000, be our quarterback. That's not how NIL works at Boston College. You're not going they don't, and that's maybe the reason why they're not going to get blue chip transfers, but they're not going to just offer kids six figures just to come here. They're going to give kids money. Believe me, Friends of the Heights does this. And from what I've heard, it's already happened. I mean, you look at Zay Flowers, the stories about him shooting down transfer offers. I think it was like Ole Miss. He turned it down, but BC was competitive to keep him here. And I've heard buzz about Donovan Azaraku and even Thomas Castellanos. They're doing what they need to do to keep them here. But it's not because they just offer them a big bag. What are all those guys? What's the commonality between all three of those guys? They're all BC guys. They've shown that they're BC guys, and they're going to reward them for it. They do the community service work that Bill O'Brien talks about a lot. They're men and women for others, so they do get their money, but they do it in a different way. They have, the amount of service work they may have to do isn't all that much, but they have to do some of it because that matches up with the mission at BC. That's what they are asking their athletes to do. So what I thought Bill O'Brien said wasn't anything outrageous, and it's not going to kill BC because the schools that are offering these giant bags of money that are above and beyond what BC are going to pay for are going to get recruits that basically are equivalent to the transfer. They're going to get transfers that are basically equivalent to the blue chip recruits BC never would have got anyways. So it's just another variation of what we've already seen. And honestly, I think what BC is doing in the NIL world is improving a lot. I think they're doing better and better. I mean, look at what BC did in terms of in Jeff Hafley to get guys here in the transfer portal. He redid that whole secondary. He brought in two wide receivers who, albeit haven't really done all that much, but you were excited when they got here. And they've been able, like you look at like basketball and things like that, they've been able to do the same thing. So it's going to get better. And I honestly think, what Bill is saying, the money that they're going to be able to give the kids that are fitting what the criteria of what they're looking for is going to improve because, hey, you have a head coach that's really attractive to donors. The buzz around Bill O'Brien is big, and donors are going to be much more apt to give money to this program and to NIL than they would be under Jeff Hafley or Steve Addazio or Frank Spaziani. Let's just be real here. This is a coach that they like, and he's winning games, so that money is going to flow in. And when you have more money, you can then use it to get guys here that are going to, maybe demand a little bit more money, but you can lay it out there, lay it out to there. The vision of the BC degree, I mean, I get it. There's going to be guys that are going to love it, but there's also going to be other guys that are going to look at it and go, yeah, who cares, right? But when they're going to be able to, I think the pot's going to get a little bigger so that they can spend a little bit more, especially like you can see behind me, right? The win BC had, you're 3-1. You have a coach, you're a big 2 touchdown favorite against Western Kentucky. You could be 4-1. There's going to be excitement. There's going to be more money. So NIL will, I think, improve at Boston College under Bill O'Brien. I think it really will. I think he's going to be able to rally up more funds to get guys to stay here, to get guys to transfer here. I'm very interested to see what this offseason is going to look like. But hey, we got 9 more. I don't know. They make the ACC championship, 10 games. Who knows, right? Let's take it one game at a time. But in a moment, I want to get into what's moving. We're going to move into the future a little bit. This is Western Kentucky week, and I got to be honest with you. I was not able to find anybody to come on the show this week. There's no Locked On Hilltoppers, no Locked On WKU. And so there's good news items that are not just football related that I want to talk about, and not just this football season related. There's future football. We're going to talk about a team that BC just scheduled that I think is going to be a great match, and I'll explain why in just a moment. Hey, NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play plays, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Are you riding high with Jaden Daniels right now? on the Washington Commanders. As a Patriots fan with Drake May, I'm a little worried that they might have got the wrong quarterback, and I know that it was not up to them. But Daniels, you can get his stats and go over and under in a lot of different games, whether it's touchdown passes, yards thrown, whatever you're looking for, you can find it on FanDuel. And to get you started, they're going to give you $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. Now all you got to do is head over to FanDuel.com. Locked On Boston College. I'm your host, AJ Black. Thank you all who have made Locked On BC your first listen every day. If you are the first, if this is what you go to every day, thank you so much. I'm almost up to year 4 doing this podcast. Almost, 800 plus episodes, and feeling good now because we have a good team to follow, and I hope you guys are enjoying it. Hit that like and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Now, on Wednesday, they had the Zoom call, which was where the NIL quote discussion came from, but also more news came out. And BC hasn't announced this yet, but BYU did, which is that BYU has a bunch of scheduled games up and coming up on their future schedule. And 2 of those games are going to be against Boston College. Boston College is set to play BYU in 2028 and 2029, according to a press release by BYU. This 2-game series will see BC play in Provo in 2028 and then make a return trip to Alumni Stadium in 2029. I am honestly a big fan of this. Now, I have some background. The years that I was a student at BC and my wife was there, BC played BYU twice, and they beat them both times, 2005 and 2006. It gives you that Mormons versus Catholics battle. I know that's like the religious battle. That's always a big thing. But you know what? It's a Power 5 school. BYU entered the Big 12 this past season after being an independent for years, and gives you a good opponent that isn't a blue blood. Because I like, there's part of, some folks really like that, like Ohio State and Alabama are on the schedule moving up. I'm not the biggest fan of this. I'm going to tell you why. I know BC has a historical edge over Alabama, but let's be real. If BC plays Alabama, the Crimson Tide are going to, it's like almost an automatic loss. Same thing with Ohio State. They're both just leaps and bounds ahead of BC. I'm not a big fan of, I know they're going to bring attractions and whatnot, but if you lose 49-7, what good is that going to do? I like Power 5 games that are winnable. Now, you had Stanford for a while, but now they're in the ACC, so those games are off the schedule. You have Cincinnati. That's a good one. I think BYU fits in that mold too, where it's a Power 5 school that you could win. Michigan State's another one. Rutgers is another one. They're Power 5 programs that you can still beat, and those are big wins for you. So I like having BYU there. And the fact that you have 3 games of history with them is a nice addition too. In addition, BC has been recruiting a little bit in Utah. They had a couple kids that didn't end up committing to BC, but took official visits. And I know there's a quarterback from out there that's looking around too. So playing in Utah is not a bad idea to get your face known more around those recruits. It's West High School in Utah that has, they had like 2 or 3 kids that came in the spring. They had one take an official visit, and their quarterback is someone BC just had him on campus for the Red Bandana game. So there's other reasons that's good. Now, looking at the schedule, this is the part I don't like. And I'm not sure what BC is doing here, but I've heard some buzz. They're playing their 2028 out of conference schedule is at BYU, at Notre Dame, Army, UNH. So you have 2 home games, but 2 tougher away games. Like both of your Power 5 out of conference games are away. I look at that and I wonder if I thought at first if Notre Dame might switch to their 2030 game, make that an away game. In 2030 when they play Notre Dame at home. Don't think that's going to happen. I've heard buzz, and this is not from any sources. Yeah, I know you guys know me as a guy who knows people at BC. This is just chatter I've heard. that there's potential that BC could play Notre Dame in Ireland. That would make a lot more sense. You're not going to South Bend there. You're going to Ireland. And I think that would be a really cool matchup. So that could be the answer that comes up for why they're playing 2 out of conference games on the road in 1 year. But looking at the schedule, this is not going to be the first or last decision that's going to be made. 2029, they don't have they have that BYU is the first game that they've had scheduled. That's a big one. So there's going to be something else that's going to be thrown in there. You look at you look at 2026 too. They have at Cincinnati, at Rutgers, at Cincinnati, Rutgers, Maine. There's going to be a fourth game. I'm guessing that is going to be a G5 school. You already have 2 Power 5 programs. You're not going to schedule a fifth. So there's a bunch of other years that have spots that need to be filled. Next year, they're filled. Next year, they already have their FCS game. They're going to play Fordham. They're going to play another FCS school in UMass. They're going to go to at Michigan State and play at home against Notre Dame. So that's the schedule for next year. So 2 FCS schools, Michigan State and Notre Dame. And that would be your schedule for next year. I like BYU. Other teams I would love to see BC schedule. I would love to see, like a G5 school like Tulane would be pretty cool. I'm wondering if they're going to get to the Pac-12. We're not sure yet. That would be a great game to throw in there. I'm a big fan of any Big Ten game that you could throw together. I would not want to see Penn State because I think they're almost in that blue blood. But teams maybe even Wisconsin. I think Wisconsin would be a fun one. Minnesota. Those would be some other teams. But it looks like most of their Power 5 spots are already starting to fill up. So that's just BC hasn't announced this yet. But when the other school already announced it, I'm going to run with it because BYU's gonna they're pretty reliable. Now in our final segment, let's switch up the style here and talk a little bit about basketball. I want to get into their ACC schedule and give you some of my thoughts about the upcoming season. We'll get into all that in just a moment. Prize Picks is America's #1 daily sports app with over 5 million active members. It's the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. All you have to do is pick more or less on 2 to 6 players on stats and projections and watch the winnings come in. Right now, like if you wanted to play through the entire month of September, they have a win automatic for you. If Caleb Williams throws for 1 yard, you get 1 win on every Prize Pick entry that you make. That's right. Only 1 yard gain gets you an automatic win with every football weekend in September. Also, Prize Picks is the best way to get action on sports in most states, including California, Texas, and California. You can win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks with as little as 4 correct picks. I love it. It's so easy to use, and I'm a big fan of doing this more than spreads. So I'm a big fantasy sports team player too. My fantasy team is terrible, so I love doing daily fantasy instead. So like you get that gut feeling on a player, you do it on Prize Pick. Download the Prize Pick apps today and use code LOCKEDONCollege and get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code LOCKEDONCollege on Prize Picks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. Prize Picks, run your game. This is Locked On Boston College. I'm your host, AJ Black. When you're done with this episode, do me a favor. I got 2 things that I need you to do. Look up Locked On Boston Postcast and subscribe and hit the bell. Just do that for me, okay? That is where I go live after every BC game. Also, go and find Locked On ACC. They have the guys, the crew, they're talking sports. I love to hear your thoughts on them because I know you guys are always very into what's going on with Locked On ACC. So check out Locked On ACC on YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts. Now, the ACC released their ACC schedule for all men's basketball, women's too, but I'm going to talk men's today, on Tuesday. And we know what BC is going to play. And I'm going to put it up on the screen so you guys can see it because otherwise it's hard to get into what you're actually seeing. So let's share. All right, you can see it here. After BC plays their out-of-conference schedule, which I'm not going to get into now, they start their ACC schedule with a noon game against Wake Forest. And there's the rest of the schedules. But one thing I wanted to showcase, first of all, look at this middle of the schedule for BC men's basketball. January 18th, Duke. January 21st, at UVA. January 25th, at UNC. Whoa, that is a brutal 3 stretches of games for BC. Duke is going to be obviously a big deal on campus. Cooper Flagg, the top recruit in the country, and for Maine, is going to return back to the New England area. There's going to be a huge crowd there for that one. BC fans always get up for Duke, but it's Duke. They're going to be good. Then you face against UVA, who's also very good, and UNC, who I believe won the ACC last year. That is a tough group. But you look at the rest of the schedule, and I like how it kind of shakes out, where you don't have to play Duke and UNC twice, either of those teams. You avoid playing Louisville twice, who I think is going to be a sneaky, very good team. And you get to play Georgia Tech, Syracuse, and Notre Dame a combined 6 times. Syracuse is obviously going to be a good team, but they're your rivals. That's fun, right? Notre Dame, they're playing better, but they were bad last year, and Georgia Tech was pretty bad. They're all going to probably get improved, but I think what we all need to understand is I'm not sure that BC. I'm still very skeptical about the ceiling for this team next year. I'm not sure that BC is going to be all that good. So getting teams that are lower in that card is going to be helpful for the Eagles. And the other big piece I wanted to talk about is I hope you guys have your coffee pots ready for the month of February, where if you look at right here what I'm highlighting, they have out of 6 games, 4 games that start at 9 p.m. and 1 that starts at 10 p.m. So 3 games start at 9, 1 at 10. My gosh, that's going to be brutal. I've got kids. They wake up early. That is going to be some late nights there. And those 9 p.m. games are awful. And 2 of the 4 are at home. The other 2 are your West Coast swing. Because remember, when they play that California swing, I think they're probably just going to stay out there. So that is where the basketball schedule looks. If you go to Eagle Insider, I have a full markup of that schedule. I gave you my thoughts about it. I gave you my 5 takeaways. Go over there, check that out, and make sure you become a member. All right. So thank you all for subscribing here at Locked On BC, whether you're on YouTube or you're Google or wherever you get your podcasts. My name is AJ Black. I appreciate all of you who have made Locked On Boston College your first listen every day. And we'll be back again tomorrow for some previews and predictions with Mitch Wolf. It's a show you're not going to want to miss. Make sure that you hit that bell so you know when we go that you can come and listen to our show. Thank you all, and I'll see you all again for another episode of Locked On Boston College, your team every day.